So I think there is something bigger going on here, and it's annoying because I don't know what it is. And I know that the lobby of political journalists at Westminster feel the same. All of us instinctively feel that there is some big fact here that we're not being made.
I mean, I'm going to ask the question because nobody else will. Is it some kind of sex thing, do you think?
So there have long been rumours about Keir Starmer's private life, and they certainly aren't to do with any kind of doubts over his sexuality, if I can put it delicately. They are to do with his past and what the shape of his family really looks.
Many of you may have already heard that Keir Starmer, the current Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, is vacationing with his family in the picturesque Madeira. This is his first vacation since taking office, and he is enjoying time with his wife Victoria and their children. However, what was supposed to be an idyllic family vacation turned into a real scandal, which caused discontent and anger of hundreds of tourists on the island. According to reports, Starmer and his family were at the center of an incident involving queue jumping, which caused a storm of emotions among vacationers. It happened during their visit to the famous Madeira tobogganing attraction, which attracts throngs of people eager for thrills. Starmer, CFS. According to eyewitnesses, some tourists waited in line for up to 3 hours, full of hopes for an unforgettable experience, but instead witnessed how the Prime Minister and his family shamelessly bypassed the queue. One of the tourists indignantly shared his impressions. "We arrived at about 10 a.m. and got in line like everyone else. It was just unfair."
And it wouldn't be fair to go any further than that, but this is an open secret at Westminster that those question marks have been around for a long time, and papers have been extraordinarily restrained in not publishing any of that speculation. And even whether they've got, maybe there are publications that have more information than I'm aware of, they've been restrained. Why? Because there's been a strong feeling that it's not in the public interest. And the bar for that these days for the press is really quite high. It's a whole different world to where we were in the John Major years. All those sleaze scandals were really just to do with cabinet ministers having affairs, having mistresses. Right. That doesn't wash anymore in modern day Britain. People actually don't.
Despite the fact that we had pre-booked our tickets, we waited patiently in line with other visitors, including many Brits who had just disembarked from the cruise ships. The atmosphere was calm and organized, and people behaved politely, as befits real Britons who always stand in line. But suddenly, after 1 o'clock in the afternoon, everything changed in an instant. We noticed the approaching column, and our hearts began to beat faster. Keir Starmer got out of the car with the guards and, ignoring us, went straight to the front of the queue. "It's a little baby toy of mine," he said. His 2 children were taken to the attraction without any expectation, while the rest stood in complete shock, not believing their eyes. The mood in the crowd instantly soured. People who had been waiting in line for several hours started shouting, "Get in the back of the queue!" There were cheers from the crowd, but it didn't help. It was completely unfair, and many of us couldn't contain our disappointment and anger. Other visitors also expressed dissatisfaction with the actions of the Prime Minister. One of the tourists noticed, "I understand that he holds a special position and he has security concerns, but it was still difficult to accept." We all felt like we were just being ignored, and it was extremely frustrating.
If one of our cabinet ministers has got a relationship with someone else, who cares?
Except if it has some bearing on legislation, if it has some bearing on the conduct of policy or laws that are being made. I mean, that's when it starts to become a problem, isn't it?
So you have to have a strong public interest defence to publish this stuff. And I think to date, the media has felt that there hasn't been a strong public interest defence. And fairness to Sir Keir Starmer, whatever may or may not be going on in his past or in his private life, he has never posed with his family or children and acted like they're the perfect family and that he's the perfect dad and all of that, perfect husband, etc., etc. He hasn't done that. So there hasn't up until now been any kind of hypocrisy public interest defence.
The British are proud of fair play and the ability to line up. It's not just a tradition, it's part of our identity. To see someone in such a privileged position disregard these values was incredibly disappointing and even insulting. The incident quickly became a hot topic on the internet, and many began to wonder if such behavior was appropriate for a man in his position. Some critics even claimed that it undermines his leadership qualities and credibility. What was supposed to be a personal family event turned into a public relations nightmare for the Prime Minister. This scandal upset not only British tourists, but also visitors from other countries who witnessed this shameful moment. With each new response, more and more people are beginning to realise that this incident may indicate a more serious problem. Does Keir Starmer really not understand the daily worries of ordinary people? Or is it just a misunderstanding, blown to the limit? What do you think? Did Keir Starmer do the right thing by skipping the queue, given his security requirements? Or should he have waited like everyone else? In other news, the Labour Party issued a stark warning about planned inheritance tax changes for farmers, saying they could lead to poverty and even suicide among agricultural workers. Speaking to the media, commentator Sarah Louise Robertson vehemently condemned the tax measures proposed by Chancellor Rachel Reeves concerning the farming community, emphasising how important it is to protect those who feed our country.
It has winter, it has fuel, it has pensioners, and it has cut. There is no more emotive cluster of words that you could possibly imagine. I think the big question is really about the budget itself. Has this undermined Rachel Reeves's authority inside the party and inside Parliament to the point where some of the things that she was planning to do in the budget she pulls back from? I think we don't know at this stage, of course, but we have a very, very upset Labour Party. I was in the chamber for all of this, and I wouldn't say the mood was rebellious or angry. I thought the mood was beaten down. You know, they were sort of sad, unhappy, bemused, confused, genuinely upset. And I think she's done an awful lot of damage to the morale of this government early on.
On New Year's Eve, more than 4,000 farmers across the UK lit beacons of hope to show that their fight against inheritance tax continues unabated. This protest, organised by Martin Williams, a farmer from Herefordshire, has become a symbol of unity and determination, as he is also one of the 5 farmers behind the rally in London on the 19th of November. Discussing Reeves' decision on the news, Robertson expressed deep concern that Labour had ignored the cries for help from farmers who opposed the planned changes. The farming community has never been so violently attacked as it is now, she told reporters bitterly. She also warned that the proposed tax changes could lead to poverty and further worsen the mental health of farmers who are already on edge. Robertson drew attention to the horrific statistics of deaths among farmers. She gave specific data on the financial difficulties of farmers, stressing that livestock farm workers usually earn from £9,000 to £22,000 per year, which hardly makes it possible to make ends meet. In addition, she noted the overwhelming debt burden faced by the agricultural sector, pointing out that most farms owed £200,000 on average.
What would you like an individual, a consumer, a household? What do you want them to think of your budget?
That I've done everything in my power to protect ordinary working people, that we're beginning to fix our National Health Service, and that we're beginning to rebuild our country, fixing the foundations, to seize the enormous opportunities that I can see are out there and we must grasp together as a country.
She stated with concern that the current pressure makes the farming community particularly vulnerable to any new financial pressures. Robertson strongly warned that changes in tax policy could have disastrous consequences for the UK agricultural sector. She later stressed that these measures could lead to the closure of even more farms across the country, which would be a real tragedy for many families. This will have an impact on our country in terms of the sustainability of agriculture, food production and much more, she told reporters bitterly. The commenter described the proposed changes to the inheritance tax as the most destructive and insane tax that would deal a devastating blow to farmers and the agricultural community, leaving them on the brink of survival. Robertson further noted that these tax changes would bring the government only a relatively modest profit, which makes the situation even more absurd. According to her, inheritance tax measures will allow receiving only £115 million per year, a drop in the bucket compared to the losses that farmers will suffer.
We're going to have to make difficult decisions. We need to fix the foundations before we can start rebuilding things in Britain. But unlike the previous government, I am going to be honest about the scale of the challenge. I'm going to level with people, and together we're going to rebuild our country based on that private sector business investment to get our economy growing. Because I asked the Treasury officials to give me an assessment of how much stronger the UK economy would be today if we'd have grown at just the average rate of OECD economies these last 14 years. And the answer is we'd be £140 billion bigger today, worth £5,000 for every family in Britain. We have got to grow our economy. It's the only way to improve living standards, keep taxes low, and have the money that we need for our dilapidated public services.
She expressed confidence that this limited financial benefit was not worth the potential devastating consequences that could befall farming communities. Robertson also stressed that this relatively small profit for the Treasury could turn into a real disaster for farming families and food production, which are already on the verge. What do you think about what we discussed in today's video? Share your thoughts in the comments below. See you.